Christina Marie Riggs. When a nurse walks into a pharmacy to collect medication, we assume it's for healing. When she enters the hospital where she works and takes drugs from the supply, we believe it's to ease someone's pain. But what if those pharmaceuticals aren't meant for patients at all? What if they're being gathered, dose by dose, to carry out a plan so unthinkable that even hardened prosecutors would struggle to comprehend it? On the morning of November 5th, 1997, Carol Thomas hadn't heard from her daughter Christina or her 2 grandchildren. Worried, she drove to the apartment in Sherwood, Arkansas, just blocks from the police station. What she discovered inside would become the town's first homicide of the year. 5-year-old Justin Dalton Thomas and 2-year-old Shelby Alexis Riggs lay lifeless in their mother's bed, arranged carefully beneath a blanket. Christina herself was unconscious on the floor, barely breathing, surrounded by empty pill bottles and syringes. A suicide note addressed to her mother explained her reasoning. She couldn't bear the thought of her children being separated after her passing, couldn't stomach the idea of them growing up knowing what she'd done to herself. But Christina Riggs survived, and when she woke in the hospital, she confessed to everything. The night before, this licensed practical nurse had prepared her children for bed with a familiar maternal routine. She'd given them Elevol, telling them it would help them sleep. Once they drifted off, she moved Justin to his bed and injected him with undiluted potassium chloride, the same substance used in execution chambers. The boy woke screaming. The chemical burned through his veins like fire. She tried morphine next, hoping to quiet his agony, but nothing worked. Finally, she pressed a pillow over his face until he stopped fighting. Moving to Shelby's room, Christina chose a different path. Having witnessed her son's suffering, she simply smothered her daughter, who resisted only briefly before going still. Prosecutors painted a picture of a woman who'd grown tired of motherhood. She competed in karaoke contests while leaving her children home alone. She'd been planning this for weeks, they argued, treating her kids as obstacles to the life she wanted. Her defense team countered with a different narrative. Christina had worked as a nurse near the Oklahoma City bombing site, treating victims of that terrorism. The trauma, combined with financial struggles and a history that included childhood abuse, had pushed her into a depression so profound she could no longer distinguish right from wrong. The jury in Pulaski County deliberated for less than an hour. They found her responsible. Then came the sentencing phase, where something extraordinary happened. Christina turned to the 12 people who held her fate and made a request that stunned the courtroom. "I want to die. I want to be with my babies. I want you to give me the death penalty." They granted her wish. On May 2nd, 2000, Christina Marie Riggs became the first woman put to death in Arkansas since 1845. Her final words were simple: "I love you, my babies." The method of her punishment carried its own grim irony. Potassium chloride injection, the very drug she'd used on Justin. She was 28 years old. Andrea Yates. On a quiet morning in suburban Texas, a mother filled a bathtub, not for playtime, but for death. What if the water meant to clean her children became the tool she used to end their lives? And what if she believed, with absolute conviction, that killing them was an act of salvation? On June 20th, 2001, Russell Yates left for work at NASA, leaving his wife Andrea alone with their 5 children in their Clear Lake home near Houston. His mother was due to arrive within the hour to help, but she never made it in time. Doctors had warned Russell that Andrea should never be left alone with the kids, but he believed short moments of independence might help her recovery. Moments after he left, Andrea began filling the bathtub with cold water. What followed would shock the nation and force a painful reckoning with postpartum psychosis and mental health in America. Andrea began with 6-month-old Mary, holding her under until she stopped moving. She left the baby floating in the tub and walked to the kitchen, where her sons were eating cereal. One by one, she brought them to the bathroom. 2-year-old Luke, 4-year-old Paul, 5-year-old John. Each boy was drowned and laid carefully on the bed. When 7-year-old Noah, the oldest, saw the scene, he ran. Andrea chased him, caught him, and dragged him back to the tub. As she pushed his head beneath the water, he gasped 4 words that would haunt investigators forever. "I am sorry, Mommy." She then placed baby Mary in John's arms, so her brother could protect her in the afterlife. Moments later, Andrea called for help and calmly confessed what she had done. Her confession was chilling, not for cruelty, but for certainty. Andrea believed her actions were righteous. For months, her mind had been consumed by psychosis and delusions. She believed Satan lived inside her, and that cameras in her home recorded every maternal failure. She thought her children were destined for eternal suffering because of her sins, and that killing them was the only way to save their souls. Years earlier, she had twice tried to take her own life to protect them from herself. But by 2001, her illness had erased the line between love and destruction. In 2002, Andrea was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. That conviction was overturned when a prosecution witness falsely claimed she had copied the crime from a television show that never existed. At her retrial in 2006, the jury found her not guilty by reason of insanity. Andrea was committed to Kerrville State Hospital, where she remains today. Every year, she is offered a hearing for possible release. Every year, she refuses. Instead, she chooses to stay in treatment, mourning her 5 children from within the walls that now confine her, a mother forever imprisoned by the illness that destroyed the family she loved most. Amy Hebert. What does it mean to love someone so much that you would rather see them dead than watch them leave? What kind of mind turns a mother's love into destruction? In Matthews, Louisiana, a teacher's aide named Amy Hebert answered those questions in the most horrifying way imaginable, transforming her children's bedroom into a scene that would haunt an entire community. Amy Talbot married Chad Hebert in 1991. For years, they appeared to have a normal family life. Amy worked at Lockport Lower Elementary School, while Chad provided for the family. They had 2 children, Camille, born in 1998, and Braxton, born in 2000. Braxton had mild autism, requiring extra care, which Amy seemed devoted to giving. They attended Victory Life Church, where Amy taught Sunday school and was known as a protective and prayerful mother. But the marriage collapsed. Chad filed for divorce in 2005, and by the next year, it was finalized. When he remarried in 2008, Amy could not let go. Her jealousy and pain deepened into obsession. According to testimony, her former mother-in-law encouraged the children to accept their stepmother, which enraged Amy. She began suffering from depression and anxiety, taking medications such as Paxil and Zoloft. Doctors also prescribed stronger drugs for seizures and fatigue. Her mental health declined rapidly, though few recognized how far she had fallen. On the morning of August 20th, 2007, Amy was alone with Camille and Braxton. Chad was due to pick them up that evening. What happened before that time remains almost beyond comprehension. Amy entered Camille's room while the 9-year-old slept and began stabbing her. Camille woke, pleading, "Mummy, I do not want to die." But Amy continued, inflicting dozens of wounds to her daughter's body and head. Then she turned to Braxton, stabbing the 7-year-old more than 50 times in the chest and back. She killed the family dog before turning the knife on herself, stabbing her own neck, chest, and wrists. When Amy failed to appear at work, a co-worker contacted a relative, who called authorities. Chad's father arrived first and found Amy lying in bed with the bodies of her children beside her. All 3 were covered in blood. At the hospital, Amy told nurses she had killed her children so her ex-husband could never have them, saying she had planned to die with her babies. She also told a psychiatrist that Satan had been speaking to her and laughing in the room. At her 2009 trial, Amy pleaded not guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity. Her attorney, George Parnham, who had defended Andrea Yates, argued that Amy suffered a complete psychotic break. Psychiatrists testified that she heard voices commanding her to kill. Prosecutors countered that her actions were fueled by vengeance, not insanity, pointing to suicide notes expressing hatred toward her ex-husband. The jury rejected her insanity plea and found her guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. The death sentence required a unanimous vote, but 3 jurors opposed it. Judge Jerome Barbera sentenced her to 2 consecutive life terms without parole. Today, Amy Hebert remains in prison, serving a life defined by the morning she destroyed her own family. Nicole Diar. When firefighters race toward a burning home, they expect to find chaos and panic. When a mother screams that her child is still inside, we assume she has already fought through smoke and fire to reach him. But what if her clothes are spotless? Her hair untouched by soot, her lungs free of smoke? What if the child had already died before the fire began? On the morning of August 27, 2003, flames tore through a modest home on West 10th Street in Lorain, Ohio. Neighbors called for help as smoke billowed into the sky. Outside stood Nicole Diar, claiming she had woken to find the house ablaze. She said she escaped, but could not save her 4-year-old son Jacob. When firefighters reached his room, they found his body burned beyond recognition. Determining how he died would be nearly impossible, but investigators discovered that gasoline had been used to start the fire. Evidence showed Jacob was already dead before the first spark caught. Forensic tests painted a grim picture. Nicole's lungs showed no trace of smoke. Her hair and clothes bore no signs of heat or ash. The story she told of rushing through flames collapsed. She had never entered that fire. She had started it. What made this crime even more haunting was Nicole's past. As a 4-year-old girl, her pajamas caught fire, leaving burns over more than 20% of her body. She endured 61 surgeries across 14 years, her childhood spent in hospitals and recovery. The experience shaped her entire life. She even volunteered at summer camps helping other burn survivors. Fire had once been her greatest fear. Yet decades later, it became the weapon she used to erase her only child. In November 2005, a jury found Nicole guilty of murder and recommended she die for what she had done. But the legal system offered an unexpected turn. In December 2008, the Ohio Supreme Court upheld her conviction but overturned the death sentence, ruling that jurors had not been told that a single dissenting vote could spare her life. Rather than risk another trial that might again lead to execution, Nicole accepted a plea deal. On June 3, 2010, 3 judges sentenced her to life in prison without any chance of parole. She had escaped the death chamber, but would spend every remaining day behind bars. During the trial, she continued to claim innocence, though her lawyer refused to confirm her position when she accepted the deal. Today, Nicole lives among the general prison population, no longer isolated on death row. The boy she once called her world never reached his 5th birthday. The exact way she ended his life remains uncertain, consumed by the same flames that destroyed the house. What is certain is that Jacob died at the hands of his mother, inside the home that should have been his safest place, consumed by the same element that had nearly taken her own life decades earlier. Gigi Jordan. How far can a mind travel into darkness before reality itself becomes unrecognizable? When does protective love twist into something so warped that destruction feels like salvation? In a luxury Manhattan hotel suite in February 2010, pharmaceutical executive Gigi Jordan gave the most chilling answer imaginable, turning medicine meant to heal into poison for her own son. Born in 1960 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Jordan held Belgian citizenship. She trained as a nurse before rising to wealth in the pharmaceutical industry, building companies that supplied medications to homebound patients. Her success made her a multi-millionaire. She married twice, first to pharmaceutical executive Ray Mira, then to Bulgarian yoga instructor Emil Tsekov. Her only child, Jude Mira, was born during her first marriage. Jude was diagnosed with severe autism and spoke only a few words in his short life. Jordan abandoned her thriving career to focus entirely on Jude. She searched across the country for treatments, therapies, and alternative medicine. But during that search, her perception began to fracture. She grew convinced that Jude was not autistic, but had been sexually abused. She accused her second husband of the crime and claimed her first husband wanted her dead. No evidence supported any of these claims, and both men denied them. Jordan said Jude revealed the abuse through facilitated communication, where she supported his hand while he typed. Experts later questioned the method, noting that the boy supposedly typed complex sentences at 6 years old and accused nearly 24 people. On February 5, 2010, Jordan checked into the Peninsula Hotel on 5th Avenue with Jude and nearly 6,000 pills. She later told investigators that Jude had begged to die, asking her to take him with her. She crushed painkillers, mixed them with vodka and orange juice, and forced the mixture into his mouth with a syringe. She then gave him massive doses of Ambien, Xanax, hydrocodone, and Prozac before swallowing a large quantity herself. 2 days later, paramedics found Jude face up on the bed, surrounded by pill bottles. The medical examiner testified that bruises on his face and chest showed the drugs were forced down his throat. Jordan's first words were about herself, not her son. At her 2014 trial, her defense claimed she acted under extreme emotional disturbance, convinced her life and Jude's were in danger. Prosecutors argued she could not accept her son's condition and noted she had discussed killing him years earlier. The jury rejected the murder charge but found her guilty of first-degree manslaughter. Judge Charles Solomon sentenced her to 18 years in prison, stating that with all her money, she had many options besides killing her son. Jordan served 11 years before a federal judge ordered a new trial in 2020. She was released on bail, then confined at home. In May 2022, an appeals court reversed that decision. On December 30th, 2022, the morning she was to surrender, Gigi Jordan was found dead in her Brooklyn apartment. The medical examiner ruled it suicide. She was 62 years old, Mitchelle Blair. When bailiffs arrived at a Detroit apartment on the 24th of March 2015 to carry out a routine eviction, they expected overdue bills, not horror. Inside 35-year-old Mitchelle Blair's home at the Martin Luther King complex, they opened a large white freezer and froze in shock. Wrapped in plastic were the bodies of 2 children, 13-year-old Stoney Ann Blair and 9-year-old Stephen Gage Berry, frozen solid for nearly 3 years. No one had even reported them missing. It took medical examiners 3 days to thaw the bodies before performing autopsies. The results revealed brutality beyond comprehension. Stoney died from blunt force trauma in May 2013. Stephen had died earlier, in August 2012, from beatings and scalding injuries. Testimony from their surviving siblings exposed the nightmare that had unfolded behind closed doors. Stephen was burned with boiling water, beaten, and strangled. Stoney was punched, struck with a 2x4, and suffocated with a plastic bag until she stopped breathing. Blair never denied the killings. From the moment of her arrest, she was defiant and remorseless, calling her victims demons. In court, she angrily justified her actions, claiming the children had molested her youngest son, an accusation prosecutors found baseless. Her surviving daughter, 17-year-old Gabby, later confirmed there was no evidence of abuse and described their home as a place ruled by fear and pain. According to Gabby, punishments depended entirely on her mother's mood. The children were whipped with cords and belts, burned with irons, and beaten with hammers. Stephen was forced to drink window cleaner and suffocated with plastic bags until he passed out, when he tore through one to breathe. Blair used thicker bags. Gabby recounted how her mother struck Stoney in the head with a board and strangled her with a shirt. Though Stoney was still alive, Blair forced Gabby to help place her sister into the freezer on top of Stephen's body, threatening to kill Gabby and her surviving brother if she ever told anyone. In court, Blair's behavior was as shocking as her crimes. She screamed at the fathers of her children, cursed the judge, and had to be removed multiple times. At sentencing, she said she felt no regret, and that, if Michigan had the death penalty, she would accept it. Her words left the courtroom stunned. She believed she was protecting her son, not murdering her children. Psychiatric evaluations found her competent to stand trial. On the 29th of June 2015, she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and received life without parole. Now in her mid-40s, she remains imprisoned in Michigan, known across America as the Detroit Freezer Mom. Her surviving children were placed in protective custody, trying to rebuild shattered lives far from the woman who terrorized them. Mitchelle Blair's case remains one of the most grotesque and heartbreaking examples of maternal filicide in modern US history, a haunting reminder that sometimes the greatest danger a child faces comes from the person meant to love them most. Mitchelle Kalina. Can a person live 2 lives so separate that even those in the same home never glimpse the darkness hiding behind a locked door? In Reading, Pennsylvania, a home health aide named Mitchelle Kalina answered that question when her 19-year-old daughter opened a forbidden closet and discovered the skeletal remains of 5 infants. Mitchelle grew up in an abusive household, a past that psychiatrists later said shaped her inability to face trauma. She married Jeffrey Kalina in 1986, at age 19. The next year, she gave birth to their son Andrew, who was born with cerebral palsy and severe developmental delays. Mitchelle cared for him at home until Jeffrey became disabled and took over as caregiver while she worked to support the family. In 1991, they had a daughter named Elizabeth. Andrew died in 2000 at age 13, and afterward, the family moved into a high-rise apartment for disabled residents. By 1992, Michaela and Jeffrey had stopped being intimate. 4 years later, she began an affair with a man she met through her job. Between 1996 and 2010, Michaela became pregnant at least 6 times. She told her boyfriend each time that she needed a hospital procedure to drain a cyst, and he believed her. Her husband and daughter noticed nothing, even when she carried babies close to full term. She continued working, described by co-workers as dependable and kind. Mitchelle gave birth alone, often in the bathtub while her family was home but unaware. She later claimed that 4 of the babies were stillborn, but admitted that one, a boy, had moved after birth. She said she might have wrapped him too tightly, causing him to suffocate. That child was placed in towels and plastic bags, then sealed in cement inside a tub. The others were placed in boxes and coolers. All 5 were stored in her bedroom closet for years. Michele ordered her family never to enter that room, and they obeyed. In October 2003, she gave birth to a girl at St. Joseph's Medical Center and placed the baby for adoption, bringing the number of children she had delivered to 6. In July 2010, Elizabeth decided to clean the forbidden closet. Inside a cooler, she found what looked like human remains. Police first told the family the bones were not human, and they threw them away. Later that night, they found more containers, and within days, authorities confirmed the remains were of infants. On August 8, 2010, Michele was arrested. Autopsies revealed at least 4 of the babies had been born alive and near full term. Mitchelle was charged with homicide, child endangerment, and abuse of corpses. At trial, her defense said she suffered from depression, alcoholism, and memory dissociation. Prosecutor Laurie Johnson described her as manipulative. Judge Linda Ludgate condemned her for leaving newborns in containers like garbage. Mitchelle was found guilty of 3rd-degree murder and sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison. She remains incarcerated in Pennsylvania today, her crimes standing among the most chilling examples of secret motherhood and denial in American criminal history. Lashanda Armstrong. What drives a mother to believe there is no escape? What combination of circumstances can make someone conclude that the only exit from unbearable pain is to take not just her own life, but the lives of her children as well. On the evening of April 12, 2011, in Newburgh, New York, 25-year-old Lashanda Armstrong faced what she believed was an impossible choice. She was a young mother of 4, struggling to hold together a fractured relationship with Jean-Pierre, her longtime boyfriend and father to 3 of her children. For weeks, those closest to her had noticed troubling changes. She spoke of feeling watched, complained that pages were missing from her diary, and mentioned lights flickering inexplicably in her home. Her sister would later describe a woman consumed by paranoia, unraveling in ways that frightened those who loved her. That Tuesday evening, whispers of infidelity reached Lashanda, rumors that Jean-Pierre had been unfaithful. A confrontation erupted in her apartment, the sounds of a domestic disturbance alarming enough that her aunt Angela Gilliam called the police at 7:43 in the evening. By the time officers arrived, Lashanda was gone, but she had not left alone. She had gathered her 4 children, 10-year-old Lashanda Armstrong from a previous relationship, 5-year-old Landon Pierre, 2-year-old Lance Pierre, and 11-month-old Kalina Pierre, and loaded them into the family minivan. Before she turned the key in the ignition, she posted a message on Facebook from her BlackBerry at 7:13 that evening that would chill everyone who read it. The message was brief and final, an apology and a declaration all at once. She wrote that she was sorry, asked for forgiveness, and announced that this was it. The drive from her apartment on Washington Street to the boat ramp was less than a mile. It was a route she knew well, a downhill journey straight toward the Hudson River, where she had once watched fireworks with her children from the corner near their home. Witnesses would later piece together what happened next. As the minivan approached the water, Lashanda reportedly climbed into the back seat, gathered all 4 of her children close, and told them that if she was going to die, they were going to die together. Then she drove the vehicle off the boat ramp and into the 45-degree water. The minivan sank quickly, disappearing beneath the surface within 2 minutes. But Lashanda, the oldest child, fought for survival. He managed to open the driver's side window and escaped, swimming to shore in the frigid water. Shivering and suffering from mild hypothermia, he waved frantically at passing cars until a woman named Maeve Ryan stopped. He told her about the argument, about his mother's belief that his stepfather had been cheating, and about the van now submerged in the river. Ryan rushed him to a nearby firehouse, where firefighters immediately launched a rescue operation. Using dive teams and a helicopter circling overhead, they searched for about an hour before locating the minivan in 10 feet of water, approximately 25 yards from shore. Inside, they found Lashanda and her 3 youngest children. All were gone. Tiffany Toribio. How does despair twist into something unimaginable? When does a mother's fear of her child suffering the same pain she endured turn deadly? On the morning of May 15th, 2009, at Alvarado Park in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a mother brought her children to play. As they ran toward the playground, she noticed something small sticking out of the sand beneath the climbing structure, a black sneaker. She bent to pick it up, but froze. Inside was a foot. Beneath the playground, where children had laughed only hours earlier, lay the body of a little boy. For 6 days, no one knew who he was. The city called him Baby Angel as detectives raced to uncover his identity. A sketch released by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children showed a beautiful 3-year-old boy with dark hair and innocent eyes. Tips soon poured in. People recognized him as Tiara Toribio. His mother, 23-year-old Tiffany Toribio, had not been seen for days. When her photo aired on local news, she decided to surrender. Police found her at a bus stop on May 20th, walking toward the station. At first, she denied who she was. But when officers found her identification, she confessed, and what she revealed stunned investigators. Tiffany explained that she and Ty had been drifting between relatives and friends, who eventually turned them away. On May 7th, Her mother told them to leave. By May 12th, they were homeless, sleeping in the park with nowhere to go. Before dawn on May 13th, Tiffany said she made a decision born from what she called love and despair. While Ty slept on the playground, she covered his nose and mouth until he stopped breathing. Moments later, she panicked, performed CPR, and revived him, only to smother him again when fear and hopelessness overtook her. Afterward, she buried his small body in the sand beneath the bridge and walked away. When asked why, Tiffany said she did not want Ty to grow up unloved as she had. Her words broke even the most seasoned officers. Police Chief Ray Schultz called it one of the hardest cases his department had ever seen. Detectives wept describing the search for the boy they had come to know as Baby Angel. After her arrest, Tiffany attempted suicide and was placed under close watch. At trial, the defense detailed her long history of depression, mental illness, and repeated cries for help that went unanswered. Family members had contacted Child Protective Services several times, pleading for intervention, but no one stepped in. Days before the murder, she even tried to turn herself in to police on a minor warrant that could not be found in the system. In October 2017, Tiffany pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and child abuse. She was sentenced to 33 years in prison, with 10 suspended and credited for time served. As of August 26, 2025, she remains incarcerated in New Mexico for the killing of the boy the city still remembers as Baby Angel, Tiara Capri Gobble. How many warnings must be given before the system finally acts? How many children must die before someone realizes the danger has not vanished but only been transferred? In Dothan, Alabama, in December 2004, every warning had been issued. Every safeguard had been established. Yet, 4-month-old Phoenix Cody Parrish would still die, his small body showing clear signs of repeated abuse at the hands of his mother, 21-year-old Tiara Capri Gobble. Tiara's history with child welfare authorities was long and troubling. In Florida, where she had her first child, Jewel, the Department of Children and Families had already stepped in. By December 2003, Jewel had been removed due to documented abuse and neglect, and placed with her paternal great-uncle, Edgar Parrish. When Tiara gave birth to Phoenix on August 8, 2004, authorities acted swiftly. The baby was taken from her within a day of his birth, and a court order barred her from any contact. In October 2004, she even signed a statement giving up her parental rights. But Edgar Parrish, the great-uncle who took custody of Phoenix, made choices that would prove deadly. He had been clearly told not to leave Florida and not to let Tiara near the baby. He broke both orders. He moved to Alabama and allowed Tiara and her boyfriend, Samuel David Hunter, to live in his home with Phoenix. The very person legally banned from contact with her children was now sharing a roof with the infant she had lost custody of within 24 hours of his birth. The early hours of December 15, 2004, marked the end of Phoenix's short life. Tiara later said she had been awake with him, frustrated because he would not stop crying. Around 1 in the morning, she fed him and laid him in his crib. She claimed she checked at 9 and saw him awake. When she woke again at 11, Phoenix was no longer breathing. She did not call for help herself, but asked others in the house to assist. Edgar Parrish finally called emergency services, but by the time help arrived, Phoenix was gone. The autopsy told the truth no one wanted to believe. Phoenix had a fractured skull, 5 broken ribs, 2 broken wrists, and bruises across his body. The injuries showed repeated, violent abuse. Tiara was arrested within hours. During questioning, she admitted she was Phoenix's main caretaker and had been alone with him for the 10 hours before his death. She even wrote a letter saying it was her fault her son had died. At trial, Tiara tried to shift blame, saying others in the home could have hurt the child, but her own words and the forensic evidence left no doubt. The jury found her guilty of capital murder and voted 10-2 for death. The judge agreed, sentencing her in October 2005. As of August 26, 2025, Tiara Capri Gobble remains on Alabama's death row at Julia Tutwiler Prison for Women.